Chapter 53. Thigh of female children. There is an evil practice among the Arabs called Mufahazat al-Sigar, which loosely translated as the thigh of children. There is no proper English translation for this practice, simply because it is not a Western norm. The thigh is the part in humans between the hip and the knee. The nearest evil practice to thigh in English would probably be child molesting. However, thigh is infinitely more evil than child molesting. It is done by an adult man to a female child, with the sanction of religion. Now let us see how it is practiced on a female child and who began this evil practice. According to an official fatwa issued in Saudi Arabia, the Prophet Muhammad began to practice thigh his child bride, Aisha, when she was 6 years old until she reached 9 years of age, fatwa number 31409. The hadith, which was quoted earlier, mentioned the Prophet Muhammad started performing literal sex with Aisha only when she reached the age of 9, Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 62, Hadith number 89. Muslim scholars collectively agree, by virtue of divine example, a child becomes an adult, available for sexual intercourse as soon as she reaches the age of 9. Likewise, the Sharia allows any of the faithful to marry a 6-year-old child. According to the fatwa, the Prophet Muhammad could not have sex with his fiancée, Aisha, when she was 6 due to her small size and age. However, the fatwa said that at age 6, he would put his penis between her thighs and massage it gently because he did not want to harm her. Imagine a man of 51 removing the clothes of a 6-year-old girl and slipping his erect penis between her thighs, rubbing her until he ejaculated and his semen ran down her thighs. To this day, this is considered a benevolent act on the part of the adult male not wanting to harm her. What harm could be inflicted upon a young girl mentally and emotionally if not a grown man showing her his penis and stripping her of her clothes and rubbing his male organ between her legs? Of course, the twisted mind that does such an evil to a female child, would not hesitate to ejaculate on her body. And if this sexually perverted evil frame of mind committed such an act upon a child, the pedophile would not stop at ejaculating on her. His evil desire would go further and rape the child before she was a mature adult. This is exactly what Muhammad did to Aisha when she was yet a child of 9. Before she reached puberty, he began to have sex with her. Let us see what the fatwa said about the Prophet of Islam and his child bride, Aisha. Praise be to Allah and peace be upon the one after whom there is no further prophet. After the Permanent Committee for the Scientific Research and Fatwas, Religious Decrees, reviewed the question presented to the Grand Mufti Abu Abdullah Muhammad al-Shamari, the question forwarded to the committee by the Grand Scholar of the Committee with reference number 1809 issued on 3/8/1421 Hijriya, Islamic calendar. The inquirer asked the following. It has become widespread these days, and especially during weddings, the habit of mufahazat of the children. Mufahazat literally translated means placing between the thighs of children, which means placing the male erected penis between the thighs of a child. What is the opinion of scholars, knowing full well that the Prophet, the peace and prayers of Allah be upon him, also practiced the thigh of Aisha, the mother of believers, may Allah be pleased with her? After the committee studied the issue, they gave the following reply. It has not been the practice of the Muslims throughout the centuries to resort to this unlawful practice that has come to our countries from pornographic movies that the kuffar, infidels, and enemies of Islam send. As for the Prophet, peace and prayers of Allah be upon him, thigh his fiancée Aisha. She was 6 years of age and he could not have intercourse with her due to her small age. That is why the Prophet, peace and prayers of Allah be upon him, placed his penis between her thighs and massaged it lightly, as the Apostle of Allah had control of his penis, not like other believers. Notice that, the fatwa admits that Prophet Muhammad had practiced thigh with his fiancée Aisha and not with his wife Aisha. 2 quick observations. First, Muhammad had thighed Aisha before married her, when she was his fiancée. Second, the fatwa contradicts itself when puts the blame on the infidels who supposedly send pornographic movies to Muslim countries and from them Muslims learn thigh of female children. At the same time it says the Prophet Muhammad was the one who started that evil practice with his child fiancée Aisha. Thigh of children is practiced in many Arab and Muslim countries, notably in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Iran, and the Gulf countries. These countries are notoriously known for this evil practice. There are many more such immoral practices against female children. According to the Bahraini women's rights activist, Ghada Jamshir, there are Altamachua by al-Mufaheza, pleasure from sexual contact with her thighs, Altamachua by al-Makaba, pleasure from sexual contact with her breasts, Altamachua by al-Sajara, pleasure from sexual contact with a baby girl, and Altamachua by al-Radia, pleasure from sexual contact with a suckling female infant. The Islamic Sharia authorizes a grown-up man to marry even 1-year-old female baby. It is very common to see a man of 70 or 80 years of age marrying a child of 8 or 10. Recently, an 80-year-old Saudi man married a 10-year-old girl. On the wedding night, the child's privates hemorrhaged so badly, that they had to take her to the hospital. Another recent case was of a Yemeni man, who raped his child bride until she died. These are just a handful of the thousands of rapes of female children that take place each year legalized by marriage. Sheikh Ahmed intended to marry the child of the Indian maidservant and practice thigh on her until she reached the age of 9. At the time, Ifat was almost 8. She was 7 years and 11 months. She did not even know what sex was. When she saw her mother stripped naked by the 2 policemen, she thought they were killing her. When the Saudi policeman took her out of the car, showed her his male organ, and tried to force her to hold it in her hand, she did not have an inkling about what he was trying to do to her. What she did know was that it was wrong to show your private parts in public, and she resisted his attempts to force her to fillet him. As it turns out, the sacrifice of a mother offering herself up to the 2 policemen prevented Ifats from being raped. Alas, now with her mother unjustly incarcerated, Ifat lost her one and only guardian, with no one to protect her from life's evil. Upon reaching the house of his first wife, Sheikh Ahmed changed his mind. He told his wife he was going to send the daughter of his Indian maidservant to her family in India, after a few days. His first wife agreed to keep Ifat in her house. He did not tell his wife that he was planning to divorce her and marry the little girl in her place. Sheikh Ahmed's wife was bedridden, suffering from the last stages of cancer. She could die at any moment, but her selfish husband could not wait for her to die. He had remarried her after divorcing her to marry his Indian wife, Christy. After Christy divorced him, kicked him out of his house at Bombay, brought her Christian boyfriend and married him, Sheikh Ahmed remarried his first wife, Khadija, just to show off that he was a kind husband. However, now circumstances were different and, for all wants and purposes, he was willing to send Khadija to the grave as a divorcee. Death for Muslim women generally means going to hell. Prophet Muhammad said that the majority of Muslim women would end up in hell. The Muslim man, in abject contrast, is promised 72 virgins in paradise, but the Muslim woman can look forward to burning in hell for all eternity. Sheikh Ahmed's never-ending evil worked out a new plan to marry his child bride, Ifat, following the unrighteousness of his Prophet of Allah. He figured that he should send her to Eritrea. He had learned from some Eritreans in Saudi Arabia that Eritrea was well known for child marriages. Most Eritreans traditionally give their female children in marriage as soon as they have reached 7, 8, or 9 years of age. Sheikh Ahmed knew that Islam forbade adoption, so he could not try to adopt Ifat and then pretend she was his daughter. He also anticipated that one day, someone from the media or the Indian government might ask him the whereabouts of the daughter of his condemned Indian maidservant. Therefore, he planned to send Ifat to Eritrea via India. If he was asked about the child of his Indian maidservant, he could say that he had sent her to her relatives in Bombay. The old Saudi feared taking Ifat himself because he expected his former car driver, Muhammad Khan, might find out about his arrival in Bombay and send Gondas to kill him. To avoid retribution, he decided it would be safer to send his Pakistani chauffeur to travel with little Ifat. This plan didn't work out too well, as Sabir's application for a visa at the Indian consulate in Jeddah was promptly rejected on the grounds that he was a Pakistani. To get around that particular obstacle, Sheikh Ahmed booked the trip of his soon-to-be child bride and his Pakistani chauffeur on a Saudi flight to Eritrea through India and the Philippines. The route taken by the Saudi plane would be Bombay, Manila, Asmara. In the end, the old man believed his plan would exclude him from any culpability and absolve him of any blame if anyone starting asking questions. He began rehearsing his story about how he sent her to her family in Bombay through his Pakistani chauffeur. And if he was asked where his Pakistani chauffeur was, he would simply say that his chauffeur decided to stay in India and make his way to Pakistan. Sheikh Ahmed already planned to keep Ifat in Asmara and keep his castrated Pakistani chauffeur as her guardian angel. He had no intention of allowing Ifat a chance of falling in love with another man and running away with him. He was going to keep the young damsel in distress in her own Barbie doll castle. Only her Ken would not be there to protect her, and she would be well guarded by Sabir, the Pakistani pimp. To make his story more plausible, Sheikh Ahmed convinced his Pakistani chauffeur to pretend to be Ifat's uncle. When they both applied for visas to Eritrea, Sabir Ibrahim Shah claimed that Ifat Khan was the daughter of his sister Rehana Khan, who was married to a Muslim man from Bombay by the name of Khan. However, before they approached the Eritrean consulate in Jeddah, Sheikh Ahmed told Ifat another story. He told her that he was going to send her with Sabir to her mother in India. To that end, she was supposed to say that Sabir was her mother's brother. The plan of the evil old man worked out perfectly, and his child bride began her trip to Eritrea. He flew to Asmara the very same day Ifat and Sabir started their long trip to Eritrea via India and the Philippines. On a direct flight, he reached the destination before them, and he booked 2 rooms in a 5-star hotel, one for Ifat and her uncle and one for himself. He suspected that if he touched the little child in the hotel, she might scream out and get him into big trouble with the police, especially since she was not his wife yet. So, he decided to wait until he could conduct the marriage ceremony and then move her to a place in the city. He was planning to buy a house in Asmara and keep his child bride as his new wife and sex slave. The most dangerous place for women in the world was the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The first couple of months Rehana spent in Jeddah showed us just how dangerous it is for a woman to be without protection in a jungle full of sexual deviants. Recently, a 15-year-old Moroccan girl, who went with her parents on the holy pilgrimage, was brutally raped by 3 Saudi men. After raping her in the terrace of a hotel, they threw her body from the 15th floor. She died for her want of getting a better view of the holy city from the terrace on the top floor. Her Moroccan parents had no idea of the violent mentality of Saudi men, and so they allowed their daughter to go alone. After all, it was just within the hotel. They mistakenly thought that they were still in Morocco. The 15-year-old Moroccan girl like Rehana was a victim of ignorance. Nothing in their lives had prepared them for the abusive nature of Saudi Arabian men. In that society, if a woman put one leg outside her door with her other leg still inside the doorway, she would be raped. For that reason, Saudis do not like to live in a building that has many apartments in it. The Saudi government built many buildings with very beautiful and spacious apartments. The government extended a generous invitation and asked the Bedouins to leave their desert villages and tents and come and live comfortably in the city by occupying these luxurious apartments. The Bedouins refused simply because they feared their neighbors might come in their absence and rape their daughters and wives. It was also common for women to be raped in elevators. Saudi men, like many other Muslim men all over the world, have sexually corrupt minds because of the misogynistic teachings of their prophet Muhammad. The greatest Muslim scholar and theologian, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, in his well-renowned book, The Revival of the Religious Sciences said, Be careful of women, for their guile is immense and their mischief is noxious, they are immoral and mean-spirited. It is a fact that all the trials, misfortunes, and woes which befall men come from women. A Muslim man would not trust even his father and brother with his wife. This is because the Prophet Muhammad said that the in-laws were in imminent danger from the wife and she was a death sentence for them. Muhammad himself could not control his lust when he saw his daughter-in-law, Zainab bint Jahsh, in her tent while she was half nude. She was the wife of Muhammad's adopted son, Zayd ibn Muhammad, and therefore, in the eyes of the Arabs, as good as his own daughter-in-law. Muhammad went to her house when her husband was away, saw her in a state of semi-nudeness, and was aroused. According to the Surah, the Prophet biography, Allah sent a wind, which lifted up the curtain of the tent and Muhammad saw Zainab lying on her bed half naked. Zainab is described by the biography as fair, beautiful, and has sensual body. In order to get her from her husband, Muhammad fabricated verses in the Quran and claimed that Allah had given her to him in marriage. Quran 33, 36-40. According to the biography, she was the only wife of the Prophet that had been married without guardian, her mazun was Allah, and the witness for the marriage was the angel Gabriel. Simply put, no man should trust his wife. This stems from yet another Islamic tradition. The Prophet Muhammad said, 4 things can never be trusted, the money, sultan, time, and woman, even if you have lived with her for a very long time, quoted in Al-Kimni, Rab al-Zaman, The Lord of This Time, Women in Religious Heritage and Legends, 1996, page 220. I know a case of a Muslim Arab man who married a Muslim Indian girl in Bombay. They lived in a rented apartment in the same building that I was living in at that time. Many families lived in the building. Whenever he went out, he locked the door with a huge padlock and she remained locked up in the apartment until he returned. Some of his friends had advised him that if he was afraid of someone raping his wife in his absence, he should just ask her to lock the door from inside the apartment. He simply replied, I lock her up because I don't trust men around her, and I don't trust her either. In order to understand the misogynistic mind of the Muslim man and the low position that Islam has placed on woman, we need to refer again to the above quoted book. The Egyptian Muslim thinker, Sayyid al-Kimni, held the Islamic heritage responsible for degrading Muslim woman. Al-Kimni, Rab al-Zaman, The Lord of This Time, 1996, page 219. According to him, the Islamic religious heritage made the Muslim woman believe she has been created from a bent rib, deficient in religion and intellect, her testimony equals half of a man's, her inheritance is half of a man's, she cannot divorce, page 220. The Muslim woman believes herself to be a Satan and therefore she cannot control her sexual desires, page 221. According to the Islamic heritage, the woman succumbs to her lust and not intellect. She has a natural tendency to cheat on her husband, because she was one of the 4 that could not be trusted, money, sultan, time, and woman, page 220. Woman had been created for the comfort and enjoyment of her husband. In that way, the religious heritage made the Muslim woman to believe herself to be a mere vagina and hence she became horma, or taboo, and haram, or forbidden, page 221. Therefore, if she kept her faith in her vagina and gave enjoyment to her husband and master, she would enter heaven, page 220. A woman's faith could not be perfected except by her complete obedience and submission to her husband, and such obedience would secure her a place in heaven as a prostitute among the many harems of the man, page 221. This gloomy picture that Al-Kimni depicted for the Muslim woman irritated many Muslim female professors and ulama or scholars of Al-Azhar University who believed that Islam had honored the woman and put her in the best place. Al-Kimni was condemned as a kafir or unbeliever by the female professors and doctors of Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University because he exposed in his book, Fascists and the Nation, the low status in which Islam put the woman, that she was inferior to man in every respect and made for his sexual pleasure. The main reason for their protest was that Al-Kimni made a mistake by demanding rights for women, which Islam gave to men only, page 177. Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed bought a house in Asmara and transferred Ifat Khan and her uncle to the home. Then, he found an Eritrean Mazoon and asked him to bring 2 witnesses to his house to conduct the marriage ceremony with his young Indian fiancé. Islamic law would not require Ifat to sign her marriage contract. According to the Sharia law, a woman is utterly incompetent to enter into a marriage contract either herself or for another, even though her guardian should authorize her to do so. A father can contract the marriage of his virgin daughter without asking her consent whatever her age. Verma 1988, page 24. Since Ifat Khan was a virgin, her consent was not required. When her mother was contracted in marriage to Sabir, the Islamic law required her consent because she wasn't a virgin. In some Muslim countries, a Muslim widow or divorcee would not be forced into another marriage without her consent. When the Eritrean Mazoon arrived, with his 2 witnesses, Sheikh Ahmed and Sabir signed the marriage contract. As her uncle, Sabir was considered the guardian of Ifat Khan. Muhammad said no marriage without guardian. The Prophet said further that if a woman gets married without her guardian's consent, she is a prostitute. Somehow, Muhammad exempted himself from this law when he married Zainab bint Gahash and Safiya bint Huwaya. In case of Zainab, he claimed that Allah had married her to him, and Safiya had no one left to be her guardian because Muhammad had already killed her father, husband, brother, and her entire Jewish tribe. A woman is not an acceptable witness in a marriage contract, nor can a mother be a witness for her own daughter to marry. If the girl's father was deceased, then it would fall to her brother, grandfather, or uncle to be the signatory. If she had no father, brother, grandfather, uncle, or any male relative, then the judge of the Sharia court shall sign her marriage contract. In other words, by way of the Sharia, a widow would have her 9-year-old son become her guardian and he would sign any contracts in her behalf. If he could not write, his thumbprint will suffice. Sharia law also allows a boy to get married when he reaches the age of 9. There is, however, no minimum age for a girl. A father, then, is allowed to contract his 1-year-old daughter in marriage if he so desired. When Ifat Khan was contracted in marriage to the 70-year-old husband, she was 7 years old, almost 8. She had no idea what marriage was. She was not even informed that she was to become the wife of Sheikh Ahmed. The Eritrean Mazoon made up the marriage contract, issued the certificate, received his fees and left. As soon as the Mazoon and the 2 witnesses left, the evil old man decided to imitate the example of his prophet Muhammad. He took his child bride to his bedroom and asked his Pakistani pimp to translate his first words to his child bride. Through his interpreter, he told Ifat that she had become his wife. Ifat did not understand what he meant by wife. Then, he told her that he was not going to harm her. He told her that he was going to give her beautiful gifts if she agreed to remove her clothes and show him her underwear. Ifat refused. He added that he would give her beautiful Barbie dolls and golden ornaments. Then, he opened a cupboard and showed her some lovely dolls, golden necklace, and bangles. The child liked the beautiful dolls and ornaments. She took them from his hands. While she was playing with the dolls and putting on her ornaments, the evil old man began to touch her body and lustfully feel her up. Then, he began to remove her dress. Ifat did not resist. She was scared that if she did not allow him to remove her clothes, he would take away the beautiful dolls and ornaments that he had given her. When he stripped her of her outer dress and left her in her underwear, the old man ordered his pimp to go out and lock the bedroom from the outside. The evil Saudi was prepared. He had various kinds of chocolates, candies, and cookies. He also purchased lovely dolls, ornaments, dresses, and shoes. He bought some games too. He filled the cupboard with every kind of attractive gift tempting to a small child like Ifat. Then, he began to coerce her with more tempting gifts. After she allowed him to remove her dress, he asked her to sit on his lap. When she refused to obey him, he showed her more dolls and chocolates. When she wanted to take them from his hands, he held them back. He used his arms to motion for her to come sit on his lap, or he would not give them to her. Ifit obeyed him and sat on his lap. When he began to feel her body, kiss her and touch her privates, Ifit got scared and tried to run away from him. Of course, he restrained her and promised to give her more gifts. Then, he opened his garment and showed her his privates. Ifit refused to look at his private parts, closed her eyes, and began to cry. He let go of her and he allowed her to get up from his lap. He stood up, went to the child-sized cupboard, and opened all the drawers and doors. Then, he showed her many more dolls, ornaments, candies, and cookies. He waved his hand and invited her to come and select whatever she would like. Tempted by the gifts, Ifit went to the cupboard and began to grab whatever she liked. While she was bending over selecting all the fascinating and colorful gifts she had never seen before and would like to have, he came up from behind and began to thigh her. Ifit did not understand what he was doing to her, so she just continued to explore the cupboard. That day the 7-year-old girl saw things she should not have seen at her age, and she was sexually abused the way no child should ever be. Only pedophiles would contemplate schemes that culminate in the ruination of a young girl's childhood. Little by little, the evil old man blackmailed Ifit until he had accomplished his first thighing of the innocent child and ejaculated all over her backside and down her thighs. Then, he allowed her to take her collection and go to the washroom and wash herself and then play with her dolls. Sheikh Ahmed felt no guilt. His conscience was clear because he knew his Prophet Muhammad used to do the same thing to his 6-year-old child bride, Aisha bint Abu Bakr.